It's 4:14 on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for the slightly late edition of Taxi TV Live. Yeah, baby. Woo-hoo. This week, starring special guest star Mr. Randon Purcell. And welcome, Randon. Thank you, fake band. Thank you, fake audience. We
All
are
right.
so sorry for the delay. We've been having all kinds of audio problems. We had 4 of us working on it, and none of us are, like in the remedial program at school, especially when it comes to audio. So pretty happy that we're on the air at all. But unfortunately, we won't be able to play some of the stuff, the audio from Randon software that we wanted to. But you know what? Worse things have happened.
That's right.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so they've obviously got it because I see people like Ann House, Dan Wessels, Floyd Armland, Todd Core, Rich Judd, Fantamalonis, Marion Laird, Lamar Franklin, Dave Miller. Okay, all the gang is here. Hello, everybody. Right. So, boy, oh boy. Let me just say that Randon is probably the hardest working taxi member that I've ever met in 28 years of running this company. The dude gets up at 4:30 in the morning to do his work. He's got a full-time job as a computer programmer. He also does a ton of music stuff. And on the side, just for fun, he flips houses every now and then. So, and he's a chef, and he's a dog trainer. Anyway, I'm really excited to have him on the show. Let me read.
Successful dog trainer, by the way.
Let me read you a little bit of his bio. Since 2014, Randon has focused almost primarily on instrumental compositions, from epic trailer pieces to subtle drama and tension pieces. He currently works with over a dozen different publishers in multiple countries and also provides freelance custom music services for various projects, from advertising to multimedia presentations. He's enjoyed placements on several networks, including HBO, ABC, NBC, CBS, Discovery, Sundance Channel, Travel Channel, and Velocity. Some of his placements include a Call of Duty Modern Warfare trailer, popular TV shows such as Mythbusters, loved that show, Vice, Big Brother, The Young and the Restless, NCIS, New Orleans, got it, NFL football, Woot, Late Night with Stephen Colbert, and Hotel Impossible, just to name a few. So the reason I added the words the right way to do trailer music, how to create film trailer music the right way in the title of today's show, is because I've heard this story. I've actually seen it happen with my own 2 eyes in somebody's basement studio. Somebody walks in, the person in the basement studio with me is playing big, beautiful, lush orchestral pads, and the person walks downstairs and goes, "Wow, man, you should do movie trailers." And I just quietly turned the other way, put my hand over my mouth, and was holding back the laughter. It was killing me. So what made you decide to start doing trailers and TV promos, I should say, and video game promos as well?
Right. Honestly, it kind of evolved into it. So I was just writing regular old songs and stuff like electronic rock, and I had my 80s band in the 90s and that kind of stuff for years. And then when I finally joined Taxi and I saw all those instrumental listings constantly, and I'd always enjoyed writing instrumentals, but I never thought of doing it to make any money, or I never really gave it a thought at all. And until I saw those Taxi listings years ago, and I was like, oh well, there's way more Taxi listings for instrumentals than for a song that sounds like Nine Inch Nails. Right? Like, how many Nine Inch Nails listings do you guys have?
Not very many.
Now and then, right? But
there was a time though.
Yep. And so I thought, I like writing orchestral music and instrumentals, and I grew up playing classical piano, so it kind of fit. And I just started going after some of those instrumental cue listings, and of course, like anybody, the first batches were always like rejected. I was putting too much in them. I had no idea about the television world or anything. I knew I loved film soundtracks and that sort of thing, but I didn't know anything about the business, anything about publishers, anything about how music supervisors pick their music. You know, thank God Taxi taught me all of that, honestly. But once I got into the instrumental writing, the cues and stuff for TV shows, um, that's kind of when I started thinking about trailers, because I was meeting other composers and people were talking about movie trailers and how much fun it was. And I always loved that part of going to the movies. Like the trailers, I never show up late to a movie. I want to see the trailers. So, you know, we always try to arrive just in time to miss the stupid advertising at the beginning, but not in time enough that we see every trailer, because that's my favorite part. So then I started seeing Taxi listings that were like, hey, we're looking for trailer music. I was like, oh, well, that would be really cool to be involved with trailers. And it interested me more than trying to like go get into film scoring, quite honestly. The idea of writing short, powerful pieces just kind of appealed to me. I get bored easily, so 2.5 minutes is about my maximum, right? So after that, I lose interest, and I started trying to write some of those and going after the Taxi listings for trailer music, and eventually got some placed with some libraries and whatnot. And it just kind of built from there, and it just became something that I found I was far more passionate about writing that kind of music than I ever was doing my electronic music or bands or songs and anything. It was just so much fun that I just decided to keep doing it.
Can you give us a short description of how writing for a film trailer is different than writing for a TV promo?
Well, you know, they're actually really similar for TV promos, honestly. At least the TV promos that I do, because they're more like miniature trailers, honestly. I imagine.
Is the length the same?
No, much shorter. So the main difference is it's kind of like if I was doing a TV promo, I might write a full trailer track, but then I would just take like a 60-second and a 30-second version that had all the big important parts of that trailer track, and those would be the TV promo track. Essentially, it's either 15, 30, or 60 seconds long usually, but generally the ones I'm going after are like the 30-second or 60-second TV spots. And they really are very similar to a trailer, except they don't have that introduction that's kind of slow or mellow, because you've only got 60 seconds. So usually they come in pretty hard hitting right off the bat.
So let's go back to film trailers specifically for a minute. What is it that the companies and their ad agencies really that hire somebody to do the audio on this, you know, do the score for a trailer, or do the music, I should say, for the trailer. What is it that they want the trailer music to accomplish? And I realize that's going to be a different answer depending, you know, is it an indie coming of age film or is it a big
right?
Let's stay with like
Sure.
action adventure, big bombastic kind of stuff for now.
Right. Yeah. Well, I imagine part of it is they want to accomplish just generally getting interest in the movie. Obviously, you know, watching the trailer without audio would be pretty lame, right? In fact, just for fun, mute a trailer sometime and watch it, because there's not really that much talking in a trailer. It's really all about the music. You know, there's talking at the beginning, but if you're watching like a Marvel movie trailer, for example, by the time you're a minute into that thing, there's hardly any talking going on. It's all guns and punches and sound effects and big music and everything. So really, in a way, it's similar to like a film score where it's telling a story, but you just don't have any time to develop it. You got to jump right into the story. Got to hit people right in the face right off the bat almost, and get their interest. So really, they're looking for something that's going to spike interest quickly, and get people out to be excited about the movie.
So tell us about the process that the trailer agencies go through to end up having a musician, a composer, make music for their thing. It's not like they just, look you up in a Rolodex or go online and search for trailer composer. How do they get the job, and how do you get the job from them?
Right. So it's actually, well, I guess there are cases where they hire a composer. I've never had that happen, but I think it does happen a lot of times. Maybe for like those huge budget movies, but most of the time they go through libraries, like the same type of libraries that would run taxi listings, right?
Okay.
So generally speaking, and of course there's exceptions to every rule, but so say Sony's making a movie and they need a trailer, they might shop that out to 3, 4, 5 different ad companies to make trailers, and each one of those companies has libraries that they work with for music. So they would put together each one of those ad companies might make 4 or 5 trailers for that one movie to pitch back to Sony. And for each one of those trailers, they're going to go out to their libraries and say, hey, we're looking for music like this. And they'll give them a brief. So then each one of those libraries is going to farm that brief out to, whatever composers they have on their roster that they think could do that. And then those composers will write some piece, not to video, but just some piece that sounds like the brief. And they send that in, and the library, if they choose to, sends it back up to the ad agency. The ad agency may or may not put that into one of the 5 trailers they pitch back to Sony. So by the time it filters down this tree, you might have 100 composers out there or more composing blind for this trailer that then goes up to their libraries. They kind of do a little A&R and filter those results down. Those go up to the 3 or 4 ad agencies that were hired to make the trailers, and then each of them pitches up. So Sony ends up getting, maybe 15 or 20 different trailers with different music from different composers all over the world. And then whatever one feels right to them, or they'll do a focus group and see which one the audience responds to better.
Decision by committee. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that we've thought, me and my publisher would have thought we had one in the bag, and the ad agency's super happy, and the contact at the movie production house is happy, and then they go to the focus group and they end up picking something totally different. So you can never predict.
Nope.
So there's a lot of times where you're doing a lot of work and it just falls apart at the last minute, but that's just kind of the game, right?
Why wouldn't the libraries have stuff on the shelf, as it were, and just pitch that stuff, or do they? And
they
it's
do.
Okay, so it's a combination of they look at what they've got in their catalog, and they reach out to some of their gals that they feel are in the right ballpark stylistically, that do this type of instrumental really well, and it's some combination thereof that gets presented to, and then it goes to an editor. So does the editor pick the music internally at the agency, or is it like a focus group or an A&R process that hands it to the editor, or is the editor making the decision?
No, it's more like, so from my experience at the ad agencies, there's like a music soup, just like there would be for a TV show, and they're the ones picking the music and supplying that to whoever's chopping up the video and syncing the music to it. So there's a music supervisor that's going to collect the songs they think fit for the trailer, and they'll give those to the editor to use.
So let's talk about money. Follow the money for a second. I know there's a really wide range. Obviously, a trailer for a tiny little, $2 million indie film is not going to pay nearly as well as a trailer for a blockbuster Marvel film. Can you give us a range of like indie, mid-level, and blockbuster?
Sure. And it does vary a lot, and it varies a lot by publisher too, because some publishers really stick to their guns and kind of hold on to the high-end market. So if they're placing something in a Marvel film, for example, especially if there was any custom work going on, like a lot of times the music soup might be like, hey, I really like this track from your album, blah, 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 but it needs these changes. And so they'll contact the composer and kind of customize that track specifically for the trailer. So in cases like that, where there's a lot of extra work done, and it's a high-end publisher and a super high-end, ridiculously expensive movie, they might pay a fee of up to, 70 to 100 grand to the publisher, right? And then you get whatever your share of sync fees are, obviously. That would be like the highly expensive, you know, you're going to go on a trip to Hawaii after you place that kind of placement. Then there's your normal movies, like maybe your standard horror movies and things like that. And they kind of range all over too, but maybe they're more in the neighborhood of like 20 grand, 20 to 30 for a high-end, you know, horror movie.
Right.
Whereas an indie movie, or like even worse, and not to sound insulting, but like an Amazon Prime or a Netflix movie, they just generally don't pay the same as Sony, you know? So
can you give us a ballpark guess of what you think they would pay?
They might be in the under 10,000 range or the 5,000 range. Probably closer to what you might expect for like a custom TV spot, you know, like a video game trailer or something like that. That's kind of the range that I would think Netflix or Amazon movies would be in.
Mm-hmm.
Not theatrical movies, basically.
So why wouldn't every composer that wants to do trailers just go online and search, trailer companies, trailer ad agencies, music supervisor, and then just bombard the music supervisor with emails and phone calls saying, man, I'm really, really good. You should try me out. How would that go?
Probably wouldn't go very well unless they happened to get someone that was willing to listen, and that person happened to really, really like their music. But, you know, odds are, a lot of these music supervisors have libraries that they like to work with. They've got that relationship. They've built up that trust. They know when they call on a Friday night and say they need something Monday morning, they know who to call, and they know that they can trust that they're going to get something back that's worthwhile. They don't want to stick their necks out just trying out new people all the time. They've got very short deadlines to make these trailers and send them back up to Sony or whoever. And, you know, they don't have the deal in the bag. They're competing with 4 or 5 other agencies at the same time. So they tend to kind of go with people they trust, or libraries that they might ship it out to a couple of different libraries that they know and trust. So, you know, I think personally, if you're going out and annoying people, and this would be the same for even like TV publishers and whatnot, you know, if you're not really, really, really good, you could really shoot yourself in the foot, because, you know, if I am annoying to one of these trailer houses and they finally tell me to go away, and then eventually I get hooked up with a library that works for them and they see my name pop up on an album that comes over for a brief, you know, they may not even bother listening to the track. They're like, oh, that's that annoying dude that wouldn't leave us alone. So, you know, I don't imagine you'd really get a lot of responses from most of them either.
What are the deadlines, the turnaround times, typically on a project?
So, you know, usually if we're just doing like an album for a library, you know, usually a 10-song solo album would be like a 7 or 8 week project. And then, you know, usually if it's a custom request, like the ad agency's like, hey, you don't have anything on your album that works for this. It really needs to be customized. We want this. Those can be anywhere from 6 hours to 24 hours. And they're really usually pretty aggressive. You get a call on a Friday night and they need something Saturday afternoon kind of thing.
And 5 guys or 10 guys might get that same call. And I don't want to offend the ladies out there. I'm saying guys generically. It's just composers in locations all over the world, hypothetically, could get that same call. So just because you got the call doesn't mean you're getting the trailer.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten, you know, a lot of those calls and met a lot of those deadlines and heard back from the music supervisor that they loved it and they're using it in their trailer cut and still not gotten them. You know, 15, 20 times that happened last year.
Wow.
So even if you get the trailer from the ad agency, it's still one of 3 or 4 trailers they made, and it's still one of 3 or 4 ad agencies that's pitching back up to the movie production house. So, yeah, a lot of times you're jumping through hoops for nothing, kind of nothing. I don't really look at it that way. Every one of those pieces is a good practice run, and as long as it's not heavily customized, using like a theme from the movie, then you just keep it in your back pocket for another pitch another day.
So when you get hired by a library to do a work for hire thing where they want an entire collection, a CD of different trailer cuts, and they give you some sort of direction, we want big bombastic action adventure
Right.
stuff. And they may reference a couple of composers that are in that ballpark, so you know what kind of big bombastic stuff they like. Do they ever pay you up front per track for that stuff?
Yeah, some do, some don't. Um, it just depends on, yeah, every publisher is different. Most do not. Um, and, oddly, usually the ones who get the most placements don't pay up front. So,
Interesting. Why do you think
at
that
least in
is?
my experience. Now, there's probably like 100 guys out there screaming right now that had a different experience, but in my experience, that's,
Yeah.
I get more placements from the ones who don't pay me up front.
I asked you the other day when we were doing the taxi quarantini happy hour that we do every day, Tuesday through Friday. I asked you if you ever get picture to work to, if you're always creating music in the blind. And frankly, I'm fairly knowledgeable about this stuff, but I was surprised that you almost never get picture to work with.
Right.
Is that
Um,
because they're afraid of letting the picture out into the wild that another competitor might get their hands on it, or what?
it could be, I mean, I had in 2019, I think over 20 of those custom, 2 days turnaround kind of trailer requests, and only one of those gave me video, and it was for a video game. And the only reason they gave me video is because they already had cut the trailer to another song, to a classical piece,
Got it.
and it was terrible. Because it was just the original classical piece, Flight of the Valkyr, Flight of the Valkyries,
Valkyrie,
yeah.
right.
Uh, and so, but it was the original recording, which is beautiful, but it's not trailer, right? And so they wanted a trailerized version of that, and so they'd already cut it. So they were like, "We need you to do this, and we need it to line up with our cuts exactly." So, because they didn't want to re-edit the video, that was kind of a rare case. I think most of the time they're farming out for the audio long before they've cut the trailer. They haven't cut all the video. They have an idea. They probably got their drawings out to know what they're doing with the trailer and what they're going for, and then they shop out for the music, and then it comes back and they cut the trailer using the music. So, yeah, usually you're not going to see video.
Uh, for people who really don't know much about trailer composition, let's talk about the 3-act or the 4-act piece of music.
All
It's
right.
for the longest time it's been 3 acts. Why don't you explain what those three
Right.
acts are, and then let's get into the 4th act, which has become popular these days.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the first act is your intro, which is generally just some sound effects, some pads, whatever, something subtle. Um, no big drums. Usually not much rhythm. There's usually just kind of enough of a well, it's like those big low rumbly hits that you hear at the beginning of movies. Just enough to kind of hint at what the rhythm's going to be, or the mood of the trailer. So if it's a horror trailer, you're going to hear some creepy noises in the background, like water phone kind of noises, that kind of thing, or some really messed up string samples or something. But very
What's a
subtle.
water phone?
It sounds like those, like a maybe like an old rusty swing set, and it kind of makes those screeching sounds like a bowed cymbal.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it was when
Really
you
high
dropped your
pitched metallic.
iPhone in the toilet. Got it. Okay.
That would also make a cool sound, but not this one.
All
So it's
right.
like, usually it's just kind of atmospheric noises, subtle tension building kind of stuff going on in that introduction. Usually there's a lot of dialogue in that part of the trailer, so it's kind of like writing for TV cues where you're leaving lots of room for dialogue to go on top of it. So it's definitely not the star of the trailer at that point. It's just there to provide something in the background that hints at what's to come.
Okay. What's
So
Act Two?
so Act Two kind of picks up where Act One leaves off. You know, Act One's going to build a little bit, and then Act Two is going to come in and introduce more pulse and rhythm to the track. This would be more for like an action type of trailer. It's going to get a little bigger. Maybe that's where you're going to have some rhythm in your strings, and you know those ostinato patterns stuff coming in your strings. Little brass hints at maybe toward the theme that's going to be coming up in Act Three. But again, it's not going big and bombastic yet at this point. It's just introducing some of those percussive elements and rhythm, but it's not going full in your face, loud and bombastic.
And is that the part where is there still dialogue, or I'm guessing?
Yeah, there's usually
The first part might be an announcer, in a world.
right.
And then after that is dialogue. And I want to register, if anybody in Hollywood that works on trailers is watching this, I've got a bone to pick. Very often when the dialogue is introduced, the people in the audience can't really understand it.
Right.
It's almost like, it's not that it's subtle in volume, but the way it's said or how fast it's said. And I've mixed a lot of this stuff back in the day when I still did audio post
Right.
at a pretty high level. And I always found that the producers in the room had no problem. I would turn around and say to them, of course, they were on the couch eating, a $65 steak from a place that delivered. I'd say, I can't understand what the actors are saying. No, I get it fine. But that's because they've seen the script. They've heard it 100
Right.
times. Their brain is already tuned into it. They
Yeah.
really need to solve that problem. They should. I'm surprised they don't pick that up in focus groups. But anyway,
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It is hard to understand a lot of the times.
yeah, especially on an action flick, where the
Yeah.
music is starting to become, more integral and maybe more
Yeah.
active.
When a lot of times the sound effects are so loud that that's what's drowning out the actors' dialogue as well.
Right.
But yeah, so anyway, Act Two is just kind of building, and again, the entire way through, it's going to build up to where it goes into Act Three. Generally speaking, it's about the same length as your introduction, which is 30, 40 seconds. I mean, generally speaking, your three acts are going to be like 30, 30, and a minute. You want your third act to be the mass of the movie, twice the same length as the other two acts combined, generally speaking. But yeah, Act Two is going to build on the tension. It's going to build on the action. It's going to build on the rhythm, and kind of come up to a climax for that act that gets you ready to go into Act Three. And generally, there'd be an edit point there. A lot of times, especially in Marvel movies where they've got the action and the comedy going, that's the spot where it would build and build and build, and it might even have a dead stop with no music at all, and cut to the dialogue where the actors make some funny comment about each other. Like in the new Black Widow trailer, it stops and she says something to the guy about, you got fat, So there's, that kind of stuff usually gets stuck right in there as a stopping point. So
Right.
it's kind of a good idea to have those stopping points if you're just writing blind, put a stop between every one of your acts, because they need those to insert that kind of stuff all the time.
And you're talking about a dead stop with nothing going on, because I'm guessing you can't have like reverb, tailing or
Usually you can leave your tails in there and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Because the editor will chop it, and it's really weird if you can get your hands on trailer music that's been chopped to the video, and don't listen to the sound effects or dialogue, just the music that gets chopped. It's terrible. If you heard the chops, they're not even clean. They're just these abrupt chops. When you hear it with everything else, it doesn't bother you whatsoever. But it sounds awful when you hear just the song the way that it was hacked up for a trailer. You'd think that would never work, but no. So if there's a reverb tailing off, they'll just chop it off. Doesn't bother them any.
It would bother me plenty.
Right.
It would drive me nuts. I'd probably be elbowing my wife in the ribs going, "Did you hear that reverb tail get whacked?"
But you know what they'll do is they'll chop it, and then they'll stick their own sound effect on top of it that has the tail that they want. the length they want.
Right.
And so you don't even hear it when it's all said and done. But the raw chop sounds just dreadful so many times. I mean, right in the middle of like a cymbal crash or something. It's just cut, done.
Let's
So
move on to the next act.
so Act 3 is like your big bombastic section or even in a horror trailer. I mean, it's the big section, right? It's where everything's going faster paced in the trailer. The scenes are flashing by quicker. There's not as much dialogue. It's the fight scene, or it's the clown chasing people in the It trailer. That kind of stuff is happening in Act 3, where it's no longer hinting at anything. It's like right there in your face, giving away parts of the story, which is often why I hate watching trailers before I go to the movie, because Act 3 always gives everything away.
Right.
But yeah, that's where it's getting. It comes in big. It needs to come in strong. You don't want to. If you were to look at the wave file for a trailer mix, it should be doing this slope upward the entire time. If you're looking at that wave and it's coming up and then down again and up and down again, that's just not going to work. They need something that builds all of the time. And, there are exceptions to that where you'll have like a weird little section in the middle and then come back. But generally speaking, you want building, building, building constantly. So 3 is going to come in pretty big and in your face. That's where you'd introduce if it's got kind of thematic elements to it, or the French horns playing a theme or something. Again, you don't want it to be some big overly melodic theme. We're not playing this in a concert hall for people to listen to. It's still got to enhance the video without trying to steal its thunder, right? So simple melodies, simple themes, but big. And lots of stuff going on. Lots of huge drums, lots of strings, brass, the works.
So the rules of the game, it sounds like, for trailers are not unlike the rules of the game for music for television, in that it's really got to amplify the emotion or the tension, whatever is going on. But you said a very key phrase, which it's not the star.
Right, yeah.
And that's interesting because, you sit in a movie theater, watch a trailer, especially, again, the big bombastic action trailers.
Right.
And maybe it's just because I'm a music person and I sit there and listen to it more. Maybe, the average person who's not in the industry doesn't listen to it in the same way.
Right.
But, yeah, the music, I mean, if you watch the trailer without the music, it would be ridiculous.
Yeah, it'd be real. Yeah. It'd be like watching a movie without a soundtrack. I mean, it's just not the same, right?
So in the past, for many, many, many years, trailers have been a 3-act affair, and the third act just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger,
right.
Crescendo to a big boom, and the world explodes, and everybody's like, woo, got to see that. And now in the last several years, they've come along and added a 4th act. What does that do?
So that's, usually like some people call it like a bumper ending or something. It's that last little, it's not the tagline. The tagline comes after, but it's that last little bit of interest in the movie, usually super fast paced, super loud. We call that, with one of my publishers, he likes the term face melting. So that's the face melting area where everything's just in your face. There's no building going on. It comes in and exits extremely loud and bombastic, right? It's very short, no longer than usually 10 seconds, if that. A lot of time it's just like a couple bars at the end. And it's just to flash a bunch of really quick, pictures on the screen. Definitely more common in action and horror movies. I can't say I don't really watch a lot of drama trailers, but I don't know that they would have anything comparable. But, in a horror movie, that's where you get that big, creepy, like, super loud, screeching rise going on, and the big, nasty metallic hits and things like that. And, I'm thinking of the It trailer off the top of my head. When it comes in at the very end of that trailer, it's just really fast cuts of Pennywise, just like chasing people and doing all these things, and it's so fast. I mean, these scenes are flashing by like one a second tops. It's just like you can almost not even take it in. But that's that last little grab your interest in the movie, and kind of, the idea is that when that comes in, everyone holds their breath and they don't breathe again until that thing ends, and then it breathes for a little bit, and then you have your little stinger at the end to let them flash, whatever the company is that's making the movie,
Right, and those weren't always in trailers years ago. Now they have I don't know, what's the terminology you used?
A stinger?
Yeah, but no. After the stinger, there's the and then
oh yeah,
like a little. I don't know. It's something when they pop up the cards
the outro, yeah.
Yeah, and that's really just because they've got some legal obligation to stick the Sony logo or whatever up there,
right?
And they can't have it be in the clear with no audio, right?
Right. Yeah. And so a lot of times the editors just put that on there themselves and put some subtle, sub boom going on underneath it. I always just include something like that in the track so that if they do happen to use the ending of my track, they can just stick that little advert at the end. And there's like a nice little sub boom while everything else is tailing off. All the reverbs are tailing off, and you got kind of a subtle sub hit or something going on.
So I've got a couple questions about the timing of things. First of all, is there, like, a TV commercial is always a 15 or a 30,
right?
But trailers don't always, I hear people say about 2.5 minutes.
Right.
And obviously you agree with that. That's a real number, but they don't have to be exactly 2.5 minutes.
No.
Why is that?
Well, because, in TV, they're buying those ad slots in 15, 30, and 60-second blocks. And it doesn't matter what your music's doing at 60 seconds. That sucker's getting cut off, right? In fact, half the time, you hear it all the time. They get cut off like 2 seconds early. Right before the last note of the song plays, someone screwed up and cut that commercial at 58 seconds,
Yep.
But, so they're buying those slots like that. Whereas a trailer, it's the movie company that's making the trailer for their film. They can make it however long they want. So, there's lots of those trailers. They're like 3.5 minutes long, especially for the big Marvel ones. But what you'll see is for the big movies, well, for most movies, but especially the big ones, they'll have 3 or 4 different trailers that they release, right? And so there's a teaser trailer that comes out eons before the movie ever comes out, 9 months, a year. You know how it is. You see them when it's like coming in 2025, and you're like, what the 5 years from now. I've been excited for Black Widow for a really long time, but so they have the teaser trailer that comes out, and that's usually like a 1.5, 2 minute trailer, and then there's the main trailer or 2 that come out much closer to the release date, and those are your 2 to 2.5 minute trailers usually.
And then they've got to have a TV version that's got to be 30 seconds, I would guess.
30 and 60 seconds for the TV spots for the trailers. And so, usually you see those get farmed out to different people. So, if you get the theatrical trailer, that doesn't mean they're going to just chop that and use it in the TV spots. The TV spots might, and often do, come from an entirely different ad agency than the theatrical movie. So, they can come from anywhere. So a lot of times you'll see libraries asking for things ahead of time before movies come out, kind of anticipating what's coming. So they might send out a brief for, songs that would work for 30 and 60-second spots for James Bond, for example. You might see that 6 months before that movie comes out, because TV spots are kind of the last thing to get done after the theatrical trailers and everything. So, those are very different, and you're writing it, and you've got to cut it right on the money. It's got to be perfect. And usually it's got to end like a second and a half before 30 or before 60, so you've got your little tail.
And is there any prescription for the length of time that each one of the acts should be, or is that just a feel thing by composers watching enough that they can feel when they made it long enough?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's not an exact thing, no, but generally speaking, you don't you want the bulk of your piece to be in the act 3 and act 4. So generally speaking, you're going to trim the intro and the second act down to 30 or 40 seconds tops. Because, kind of with any advertising, you don't want to take too long to get into the meat of the thing, right? You've got to use act 1 and 2. They exist solely to get you to act 3. So you don't want to drag them out. There are cases where they call them slow burners, the slow burn trailers, and they're the ones that don't have all the big stops between all of the acts. It's like one big continuous 3-minute block of music that just builds. You see that a lot in like the adventure kind of trailers. Some of the sci-fi trailers, you would see a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And so those are a little different because although they're still kind of 3 acts, they're not separated, and you can't really easily pinpoint where one starts and the other ends because it's just a constant slow burning build all the way through. But generally speaking, if you kind of target 30, 30, and 60, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
And what about... I totally lost it. Whether your entire piece gets used. I mean, I've known plenty of trailer composer friends that are really upset when their entire piece didn't get used and the editor cut in maybe 3 or 4 different pieces of music.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even I mean, you've got to worry about key changes, tempo I can understand, but there's so many variables. How do they do that?
I don't know, because you rarely hear a trailer that has one piece used all the way through it.
Yeah, but
really rare.
And I don't even notice it. I'm in the industry and I watch that sort of thing, and I'm sitting there watching a trailer. I admit I get sucked in by the action in the trailer, whatever the story is, the trailer, and I haven't realized it was 3 pieces of music. But how do they find? Yeah. Is there like a common key that almost everybody cuts in, so your stuff is interchangeable with other stuff?
Not really, no. I mean, these things are kind of all over the map, and I think they just find ones that work together. They've probably got enough tracks from their libraries and stuff that they can mix and match. But yeah, it is crazy. And when you really start listening while you're watching these trailers and really start paying attention, sometimes you can tell, like, oh, that intro didn't really, you couldn't hear how that intro could flow into the next act, you know? So you kind of guess it came from 2 different composers. So a lot of times what you see is Act 1 and Act 2 come together from one composer, and Act 3 comes from another composer.
I'm guessing the guy who did 1 and 2 wasn't bombastic enough, or didn't let it get big enough, and it's like, well, that's great for the first 2 acts, but...
right, exactly.
So how do the composers get paid then? Let's say 3 pieces of music end up in a theatrical trailer that's 2.5 minutes long, and let's say that they're not all exactly, 45 seconds or whatever. Does the composer get paid by the running minute, or?
No, so it's not like TV where, there's a cue sheet that says your music was used for 1.5 minutes, so you get paid more than the guy that was used for 45 seconds. I mean, ultimately, it's really up to the publishers, and especially if they're coming from 3 different publishers. Like, the guy that did Act 3 might be with a super high-end publisher, and he might get $20,000 for Act 3, whereas Act 1 and 2 may have come from a publisher who doesn't negotiate as well.
Wow.
And that guy might get paid $3,000 for Act 1 and 2. It could really go either way, but it's really all about the publisher.
Let's hope they don't go to the same movie theater on the same night, because accidentally, oh, really? You compose for trailers? Yes, so do I. Really? Oh, yours is in the... Oh, that's amazing. So is mine. What did you get? Well, I got $12,000. What did you get? 1,900.
Right. That's exactly it. And, I think as a general rule, like I'll never ask anyone else what they got paid for something, because I don't want to know. I do not want to know.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, really, it could be all over the map, even from the same publisher, because they're going to negotiate a deal for each portion of that trailer.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, you'd like to think that if it's all coming from the same publisher, they're going to take whatever they got paid for it and split it up equally among their composers, or or based on how much of each one's track was used.
As a friend of mine very wisely told me about 20 years ago, there's favored nations and then there's favorite nations.
That's exactly right.
Um, so let's talk about sound effects, because they've become such a big part of trailers now. And I think the average person watching a trailer in a movie theater doesn't realize that much of that big bombastic stuff, the drum hits, the explosive sounds, the brams that we'll talk about in a minute, all that stuff is layered in on top of the music after the music has been edited. So I want to know, the people that create those sound effects, how did they get paid?
Yeah, so actually, most of the time they get paid in the same way. In fact, a lot of times the libraries that do the trailer music also have albums of sound effects. And so if this music editor is in Music Soup is in there like, oh, I need a big huge whoosh bang that sounds like a monster, they'll look through this library and pick one that they like, and it'll get a quote request just like the music for the trailer, you know.
Yeah.
You'll get paid for a single sound effect getting used on a trailer when it was someone else's music and they just used your one riser or your one big whoosh bang or something. That happens all the time, but it gets quoted just like anything else, just like a piece of music.
Do you have any idea what the range would be on those quotes? Is it, like
a
few hundred up to a few thousand, or are there,
Yeah, I mean, if it's like a big bram kind of thing that's kind of important in the movie, it might pay more like $2 or $3 grand. If it's just some whoosh bang that's used in the middle, it might pay $300 or $500 or something, But yeah, it can be all over the map. It's never going to be a ton of money. I mean, a few grand is a good chunk of money, right? But not compared to 80 grand, right?
Yeah.
So it's all relative. But
it is all relative.
Sound effects, so a lot of times they'll go to the libraries for the sound effects too. They'll even go to the libraries and ask them to create them, custom sound effects, or they'll go to companies like and buy libraries of sounds. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Boom Library.
No.
Boom Library makes really wicked, top quality sound effects for movies, and for composers actually, because you can buy all of their raw material sounds that they've recorded and make your own stuff from them as well. But not for licensing. For using in a composition, that's one thing, but I can't buy their stuff, morph it, and then license it out all by itself. It has to be part of a
so
song.
Why don't you, as a composer, or all composers, I mean, you guys would know where those elements, the sound design elements, would probably go, although I imagine a certain amount of them are cut to picture.
Right.
When there's a car flying off a building or something, obviously,
right.
And you don't know when that's going to happen. But aren't there places where you could use those sound effects kind of generically? And so if you license it from a library and then it goes into the trailer and makes it into the theatrical release, they've already, the sound effect producer's already been paid because you bought it from them and put it in your music. And there's no residuals. Just for those of you who are in America, you don't get paid residuals on theatrical releases. You only get paid everywhere else in the world. Just saying.
Right. In America.
You get, some back-end PRO money for theatrical release elsewhere, but not in the good old US of A. Wow. So when it's all said and done and you hear a piece of music that you've created in a trailer, what does that feel like?
Really cool, I mean, I haven't had a ton of big trailers. A lot of mine have been TV stuff, but even still, it's awesome.
Yeah, that counts.
But video games, things like that. It's really cool to hear it. Even if it's not a big theatrical release. It's kind of like with anything. It's fun to hear your music anywhere. In a background of a TV show, it's kind of validation, I guess. Hey, someone liked that enough to stick it in there with their art.
Is there any, I know that you don't really specialize so much in the other forms of trailers, but can we go through like a range of types of trailers? I gave the example before of, a coming of age film, which might use like classical quartet or something as somebody's
Right.
riding their bicycle through the countryside, with a flowery hat
Right.
on or something like that. What other types are there?
So yeah, something like that. Then there's the um, sci-fi trailers, which are really similar to the action trailers, just slightly different sounds to them. Definitely more techy sounding than big, huge, bombastic orchestral. Um, there's horror trailers, which is one of my favorite,
Gee, I
which
couldn't
are
tell.
very sparse. Yeah, very sparse.
Yeah.
Lots of weird noises. And those ones are fun because you're looking around your house and just recording stuff and turning it into weird noises because they just want unique noises, and you're not trying to sound huge and bombastic. It's just you just want to creep someone out. So any noise you can make that's creepy, then great, throw it in there.
Well,
Um,
plenty of time to look for sounds in your house this month.
I know, right? Coronavirus is going to bring about all sorts of sound design.
Yeah, and a
Um,
baby boom
right? Yes, for sure. What did they call them? There's a name for those babies. I can't remember now.
that are going
Oh,
to be
children of the corn.
children of the corona. Oh,
That's right.
yeah. I was on
Then
the
there's
phone
also
with somebody last night, and I said the same thing about there's going to be a baby boom, and they actually sprung it on me that they will be contributing to that boom. So they got a head start before coronavirus was already here, but it wasn't like front page news yet. But I think
right,
they're still going to try and lay claim to you're a corona baby. Anyway,
right. Yeah, there you go. What other types? Oh, there's also like the Disney trailers, right? Like the Mulans and the Jungle Boat. They're those adventure feel good. They're not like the indie feel good that are usually some guitars and stuff like that. They're still orchestral, but they're much more like your sweeping strings and kind of if I'm someone that wants to be a film composer and that's the kind of music I'm writing, that would be the type of trailer that I might be able to go after more than say an Avengers trailer, because it's that beautiful orchestral, emotionally uplifting kind of music. But they all still generally follow that same three acts. They're all building. They might not go bombastic and they might not get huge, but each one by the time it reaches Act 3 is going to deliver the meat of that trailer and enhance the video to get people excited about seeing it. So whether it's really uplifting, beautiful melodies that are playing to enhance it, or extremely creepy, loud, in your face, terrifying noises, either way, they're still following that 1, 2, 3 act for the trailer.
what about the use of reimagined popular songs or hits? That's been a thing now for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years.
Right. Yeah.
People keep saying, "Oh, we can't wait for that to go away," but it's like ukuleles not going away anytime soon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
How does that affect you as a composer when you know that they might actually take, I'm trying to think of a good example, like the song Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones, and do like a really slowed down version with like an indie attitude vocal in it. Do you ever know if they're going to use a reimagined cover before you start creating music for something, or is that an afterthought in the edit bay?
I know that there's libraries that have albums of reimagined songs that they've done just in case, But in my experience, almost every time it's a custom request. Like, the library calls and says, "Hey, they want to use this song. They've got the rights already to use it. And they'll send over like the vocal stem and the instrumental stem separately so that you can use it and compose around it." Usually that's the case. I've got to imagine in the cases where you hear some big name singer doing it, like Hunger Games used a Lord reimagination of Tears for Fears
Right.
years ago. Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I got to imagine that was some sort of custom request, that involved, hey, we want her to sing it and we want this. That probably didn't go out to a bunch of normal guys like me.
Hey, you consider
but,
yourself
I had
normal,
probably,
huh?
yeah, well, relatively speaking. I did have, maybe 4 or 5 requests last year that were other people's songs that were being chopped up and trailerized, basically. So it does happen, but um, a lot of times you do all that work and chop it up, and I hate doing it because if it doesn't get used, you can't reuse it for anything else. It's all throwaway work because it's using someone else's song, and I don't have permission to just pitch that out to anyone I want. So I generally don't jump all over those because, I've been burned too many times where it's gotten dropped at the last minute from a focus group.
Do styles change? Are there seasonal changes, annual changes, decade-driven changes where that music you composed 5 years ago is now out of style and unusable? So libraries, do they have to keep refreshing to keep stuff modern because styles have changed?
Right. I think there's an element of that too, but and I know a lot of guys who've said this too, that a lot of times they're getting trailer placements off songs that have been sitting in their library, their publisher for 4 or 5 years, and they suddenly resurface and get used in 2 or 3 trailers. So it's kind of like the TV world in that sense. You write those instrumental cues and you don't see anything on your pro statement for 5 years, and then all of a sudden it starts showing up. So you don't really ever know. I mean, the goal is to kind of try to make them timeless to a degree. But, if you listen to some of the trailer music from 5 or 10 years ago, it's just not as big and in your face as the trailer music that's coming out today. So odds are it's not going to get used as much. But I think a lot of those older tracks end up getting filtered down into TV spots and stuff like that as well. So there's quite a bit of life in trailer tracks if they're written well.
Let's talk about the quality of the sample libraries, the composer's ability to use them really well. I won't mention the gentleman's name. It's got to be somebody you definitely know in the music side of the trailer industry. And we sent him some stuff one time for his library that we thought was spectacularly good. And I can't imagine anybody listening to it saying, that's not spectacularly good. And when he got it, he said to me, compositionally, the stuff was pretty okay. He said, but it wasn't real strings. And I said, well, of course not. These are people working out of home studios. And he goes, well, dude, when we get stuff in a big movie, it's got to be real strings. And frankly, that was some years ago. It was the first time I heard about people doing remote string sessions using a live orchestra in Prague or somewhere. So can you explain what that is, how it's done, how much it costs, and how necessary it is to go to that extreme?
Yeah, I don't think it's often that necessary. I mean, there's certain libraries that always do it, where they'll have, a lot of libraries have multiple labels within the same library. And so they might have one label that specializes in trailers that have live strings recorded. So there's that element, but, the string libraries now have gotten so good and sound so good that they work fine, as long as you can record them in well and know how to make them sound good. It's going to be a little more rare for, say, like the Disney-esque adventure things where it's all about that music and more melody and stuff. Those, a lot of times, yeah, they'll hire an orchestra to play those, at least like layer some real strings on top of the pre-recorded ones. But those big like Avenger type movies and stuff, like a lot of those just use library tracks that were recorded in someone's bedroom. I mean, if you've got the good libraries out there, I've never had to layer any strings over anything that I've done.
That's good to hear, because there are a lot of talented composers out there that can't do, the Prague Symphony thing. And yeah, admittedly, it was some years ago that gentleman told me that, but the quality, I'm an audio engineer by trade, I guess you could say, and I certainly listen to a lot of music for media. and I can't tell the difference anymore. I can't. Maybe
Right. Yeah, they
somebody
sound
who sits in
really
an orchestra actually could, but I hear stuff that's
right.
great and it's
A lot of
indiscernible.
times, a lot of times when someone that knows what they're listening for says that it doesn't sound like real strings, it's not even so much about the samples as much as the composition. If it's not played in the way that a real string section would play it, with the different sections layered on top of each other, or if it's played in
Right.
a very mechanical kind of, machine gun kind of way with the same velocities across the board on everything. So, but if you're thinking about it being played and how it would be played with the different bow movements and the random, velocities, these string players aren't playing the exact same velocity every time they strike the string.
So how did you
So,
learn that stuff?
um, mostly just, well, there are the cases where, someone told me like, hey, this would sound better if it sounded more like a real orchestra playing it. Um, and so I listen to orchestral music and go back to my, roots in classical music. But if you listen to the live string sections playing, and you can feel the music coming from those string sections, because it's got a pulse to it, and it's not mechanical at all. Even if they're playing, really fast string repetitions and stuff, you can tell it just has those variances in every note. And so if you start recording your samples and just playing them in at the exact same velocity, it's just not going to sound real. But if you go in and put some randomization to that, or if you're playing big long string lines, when they're playing those, running their bows across those strings, it's not the same volume all the time. They can push harder and let up on it and get those different nuances. And you can control all that in the sample libraries these days.
And
So,
nobody's got a 32-foot bow. Nobody.
right, yes, exactly. Exactly.
Nor do they have a 32-foot arm to control
Right,
that
that
bow.
thing's got to change direction at some point, and you're going to hear it, and you're going to hear the little nuances of those changes. And so a lot of that's recorded in the libraries these days. So as long as you're not lazy, you can control vibrato, and you can control the amount of pressure they're putting on the strings and all of that stuff. So, as long as you're not just being lazy, you can make them sound really realistic.
Speaking
And
of
of course,
not
you got to buy good sample libraries too. There are some that are better than others.
Speaking of not being lazy, you are definitely the least lazy person that pops into my head. As if you didn't have enough on your plate already, you and two other composers who you should name in a moment created a library of your own, specifically targeted for trailer work, and it's called. You guys are
Yeah.
called the Fallout Group. Tell us how that came about in the products that you're making, because that's what got me interested in asking you back to the show.
Yeah.
You did one with me in the office a couple of years ago, I think already. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I saw you in my Twitter feed and clicked the link and went to check out the videos, the demo videos of the stuff you guys were making. I was blown away. And then I called you or something and said, how the hell do you have the time to do all this? But you do. So tell us how.
I don't know.
I don't either. You must have the most wonderful wife and kids in the world. It's like, we know Daddy's alive because food disappears from his plate every night, but yeah. Anyway.
No, it's all early morning work for me. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, come on, even early morning, what do you get? Like 2.5 hours in before the family wakes up?
And I usually get about, by the time anyone's really doing anything, or before I start the day job, I can get in a good 3.5 hours.
And do you do that 6 or 7 days a week, or
7 days a week? Yeah.
Okay.
And then if there's nothing going on in the evening after we've done, dinner, and, maybe we'll play some games or whatever, I might sneak down for an hour at night too to catch up on things. But yeah, that's about
do you ever like fall asleep next to your wife and you hear her like breathing, and you check and make sure she's asleep, and then you quietly slip out of the bed, tiptoe down to the basement?
That was me like 20 years ago. Before I started getting up early, I'd stay up all night and do music. But
Yeah.
now it's the other way around. Like, I'm telling you, if I sit down for too long and I'm not talking, I'll fall asleep. I fall asleep anywhere I am, as long as I'm not talking.
Maybe you should have
yeah.
named the company Narcoleptic Productions.
Maybe.
So yeah, tell us about how Fallout came to be.
Yeah, so me and then of course you know Kyle nicely,
Yep.
and I don't know if you know Andrew Skipper or not.
No.
Um, we've done some stuff together, and so we kind of all got talking about starting, building our own instruments, mostly because we were so frustrated with the existing instruments for trailer composers, because a lot of them are very finished products. They sound huge, they sound really cool. I mean, the libraries out there are really cool sounding. They sound like they belong in a movie trailer. But when you're writing something and you want it to sound unique, it's really hard to use them because you're like, well, I heard that riser in the Black Widow trailer, or whatever. I heard that riser here. I've heard that.
What next? Um, all right, so we're talking about you and Kyle and your third partner getting together and building the Fallout group,
Right.
and why you needed it. So, what did you guys do differently with your sounds than the other established companies had done that you didn't like their stuff so much?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we wanted to make it easy to use and manipulate. So instead of making everything kind of a finalized product that sounds done and ready to go, we made it so it's kind of dry. So if, like with our riser instrument, um, instead of having it just one recorded riser with everything we combined together, we broke it down into 3 layers. So you could pick different elements for each of the 3 layers, and they're all recorded dry. So you can use your own reverb to match your song. That was the problem we always had, was you'd buy these libraries and they're so big and beautiful sounding, but they don't fit the reverb of your song, or they don't fit, maybe there's one element in there that you don't like or that you need to change. So we wanted to build a riser instrument where we could manipulate each characteristic of the riser and kind of have something to make them unique, so that they stand out.
I had people while we were trying to fix stuff saying, I don't really know what a riser is, so can you describe
Oh,
it?
sure. So a riser, I wish we could have had
Yeah,
played them. Yeah,
that's the reason the show started late. Is we tried so hard. We did a test run the other day and it worked fine.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we started out way in advance of today's show. We could not get the audio to work. So
yeah.
sorry, it's just been a hellish
So a
day.
riser, it's going to be in every trailer and a lot of TV production music as well. But yeah, a riser is just any kind of tone, or a lot of times it's strings, anything that's building in volume and intensity, and usually rising in pitch. And it kind of lays in with all of the other music going on in a scene to just build that crescendo. So it's more than just a crescendo, though. So if you imagine like a brass crescendo that just kind of gets louder as the note holds out, or strings or anything, it's that, except it's usually rising in pitch as well. So strings are going to play like an aggressive kind of glissandi up a 2-octave stretch, and get louder and louder and louder until they come to that climax. So you're going to be using trailer or risers in every act of your trailer. It's going to be one to end Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and oftentimes short risers in between, just to help build certain momentum or build tension or whatever. So they're a crucial piece.
And talk about some of the other things that you've also got in there.
Yes, we've got the Brahms instrument. Which
Tell everybody
is,
what a Bram is.
the big Hans Zimmer, dun, big brass sound.
Not that.
Not that. No.
Okay.
So again, we had problems with libraries that made these because they sounded really cool, but they were also very unique sounding. So once you hear it in one trailer, you kind of don't want to use it. So we made an instrument that separates out the synth side of it and the live brass recording side of it into 2 layers, so you can mix those however you want, or have one or the other.
And nobody had ever done these things before? Like, you guys couldn't have been the only composers being frustrated by the inability of these other companies
really
to do
so
it.
much. I mean, you'd hear a little bit of it here and there, but most of the time, these sound effects libraries that make this kind of stuff are making it almost targeted toward the music supervisors that want to use that stuff on top of other music. And so a lot of it was just too affected or too polished to be useful, and especially if you wanted to create something unique out of it. So we kind of set out just doing our own thing, trying to make instruments to share with each other to use. And as we started playing with it, and we recorded live strings for our riser instrument, live full orchestra. We recorded a live ensemble string section, and and we just realized how amazing it would be to combine that with synths and a bunch of organic scraping and bowing, and you know, we scraped concrete, we scraped all sorts of stuff to build these risers, and then we made them in different, 4, 8, and 16 bar risers, and you can combine them in any way you want. So all in all, with all the sound sources, we calculated that you could make 850,000 unique risers.
Wow.
And that's not counting effects. That's just mixing the different sound sources together.
Do you think that the music soups at the trailer companies will start buying your software and using it in their edit bays?
Probably not. I guess they could, though.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like such a great tool.
What it isn't is pull it out of the box and have a riser ready to drop into your mix. I mean, it kind of is. We've got presets and whatnot that do that.
Yeah.
But it's really geared toward the composer side, where you want something unique and that isn't in every other trailer. And so, or something where you can manipulate it to sound the way you want it to. So that's really what we were going after. An editor that wanted to spend a little time could certainly use it, and I would hope they do. But
where can people? Where I saw the demo, I can't remember if I saw it on your website or on YouTube. But where can people go watch these demos? Because I'm sorry that we couldn't do it for you on the show today.
Yeah.
But frankly, the videos would have been or better than what we probably would have done on the show as well. So yeah, go watch these things.
Yeah.
Spend some time, because I'm not even a composer. I understand what composers do, and I understand everything takes place in the studio. I was blown away by this stuff. You guys did a great job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and you can see the videos are on YouTube, but so there's the Fallout Music Group YouTube channel, or just on our website we've got the same video link. So
and what's the URL for the website?
falloutmusicgroup.com.
All right,
So,
Fallout Music. Yep, falloutmusicgroup.com. And what are the 3 different products that you guys have now?
So we've got the trailer drops, which are just the, I can't do it, but, the sub drops that you hear in the breaks in trailers, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So we've got a real simple one.
See, you just did
drops. Yeah, thanks. I promise that's not one of the sounds. But so we've got that. That's the one I actually gave out at the Road Rally last year.
Okay.
So, so we've got that. Then we've got the trailer Brahms instrument that we talked about, and then our newest one is the Ascendance risers. And so, and we've got a whole bunch more planned for this year as well.
Wow, I don't know how you find the time. I really don't, man. You're quite amazing.
Thank you.
And your wife probably qualifies for sainthood, I'm sure, as your family.
She does, for many reasons other than just that.
Well, this has been enjoyable, other than some tech glitches. I always love hanging out with you. You're extremely articulate, and like I said, I wanted to have you on the show because I'm so blown away by what it is that I saw in these videos. I want everybody to know Randon didn't reach out to me and say, "Hey, can you tell the taxi community about this?" This was all me being so completely blown away that I reached out to him. I don't even know if I told you, but I featured it in the cool stuff part of the newsletter, I think it was last month.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I did that without even talking to you. I just saw it and copied the URL and handed it off to the newsletter people and said, "Here, make sure that gets in." So
awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we're trying to make it cheap so everyone can afford it.
Oh, that's the other thing. Tell them how cheap it is.
So the risers are $59, which, competing products are generally in the 300 plus range.
Yeah.
And then the Brahms instrument is $20, and the drops are just $5.
Unbelievable.
I mean, generally, most of the products we're planning, we're trying to keep them all under the $50, $60 range.
Incredible.
Very targeted, high quality, and just making them so everyone can afford them, basically.
And it's not like they're a lesser product. They're actually a far more robust product for a fraction of the money.
Yeah, they are really super useful. I have risers from all sorts of companies that I've used over the years, and I can honestly say that since we built this riser tool, it's the only thing I use constantly.
And
I never use the same one twice.
And it looks like it's really easy to use. As
It
I
is,
watched
yeah.
the video, I went, I could do that, and I've
Yeah,
never
yeah.
done that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's really basic. There's not multiple pages or anything. It's just little one-page instruments that give you some nice flexibility. So, yeah, we're just trying to go for ease of use and inexpensive.
All right. Well, I promised everybody that we would give away one of your products in the chat room.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if I asked you this, so I'm going to ask you live on camera, and you have to say yes, which is, can I give another one away to the person who poses the best question in the comments after the show is off?
Yeah, sure.
As well? Awesome.
Yep. And let's just make it the full suite.
Oh, really? All
Full
three of them?
suites. Yeah, all three of them.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so guys, here's what we're going to do is you guys are going to type in a +1, and hundreds of them are going to go flying by, and Ariana is going to put her magic finger on the chat room, and she's going to pick a person, and then she will connect you with Randon so he can send you the software. Yep. So ready, set, hold on. Here we go. Nope. You guys start too early. Hold on. Go.
And while they're doing that, I will say on our website, by the riser instrument, by Ascendance, there is a download link for 25 risers for free, by the way.
Wow.
So anyone can go grab that for free. It's literally just an audio recording of 25 of the snapshots of the presets that we made just to give away.
I can't see how this thing isn't going to take off like crazy, because anytime you build something better that's much cheaper, yeah.
Right. It should, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so far, I mean, the people who have used it, and we've got some big composers that have bought it and used it and just love it. So, yeah, we're hoping. It's a lot of fun to make, so, it'd be nice to make some money off of it too, right?
You should, I mean, if you built a better mousetrap. Wow. I don't want to give out any full names, but our mutual friend Dan, who lives on another continent, has he tried it?
I don't think so. No.
Interesting. All right.
I should bug him about that, actually.
Yeah, you should. I love that guy. He's so, for lack of a better word, he's just a good, sweet man. He's just, he's good natured, very right. Serious and thoughtful and contemplative, but I like him. And his wife is a hoot. Right. I love his wife.
I've never met his wife, actually. I've never met him in person.
Oh, really?
No,
just,
okay. Phone, internet, email,
Oh, man. I met them. They came to Taxi Office. We went out to dinner one night a couple of years ago, and then they were in town about, I don't know, maybe 9 months ago, and Deb and I went out to dinner with them again and just had the nicest time there. Yeah, if you ever get a chance to meet them, go do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Ariana, have we picked a winner? Type something into, because people are just hitting +1s like crazy at this point, so. Picked one. Okay, tell us. Okay, everybody can stop so Ariana can tell us who she picked. The winner is Stephen Patty. Congratulations, Stephen Patty. You have won the entire suite of stuff from Fallout Music Group. And trust me, after seeing the videos, a couple of them I actually watched twice, you just got something really awesome. So, Stephen, what you need to do is email taxitv@taxi.com. That's taxitv@taxi.com. And tell Ariana your email address, and she will send it to Randon, and he will send you the suite of good stuff or a key to download it or whatever.
Yep.
And remember, everybody, go after the show, a couple minutes later when they post the archive video, please go give us a like. Please, I'm begging you. We like those likes. Subscribe if you've never watched this show before, and don't forget that little alert bell thing.
It's up there somewhere.
Right up there on your screen. Click the alert bell on YouTube so that you get alerts when we go live. Randon, I can't thank you enough, man. I always enjoy hanging out with you. I'm just so proud of everything that you're doing, and proud of you guys coming up with this software. It's so impressive that I really, really, truly wanted to let everybody know about it. So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Good
Appreciate
luck.
it.
Keep me posted, and I will see you at the road rally, which is, I think realistically, it's probably going to happen. We will keep everybody well informed, and
well, I'm counting on it one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm going to send my private jet to everybody's house to pick you guys up, one at a time, and we'll have it disinfected. I'm kidding. I don't own a private jet. I own a plastic jet that says Continental on it. It's about that big. Yeah, that big. That's the only jet I own. All right, Randon, thank you very much.
All right,
talk to you soon. Bye, you guys in the chat room.
Take care,
all right, we're out. Where's the band? Holy crap. There's the band. Man, they never drop a beat. I love those guys. Bye, everybody.